At this time, I'd love for you to join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator, Jarett Wieselman.
Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I'm very excited myself to be here to facilitate a conversation with one of the most acclaimed actors of her or any generation, honestly. She's an Oscar nominee, an Emmy winner. Ladies and gentlemen, Felicity Huffman.
Hi, guys.
How's it? Thank you so much.
I love actors. I love you guys. I married one. I love them.
Thank you so much for being here with us this evening, Felicity.
Thank you for having me.
So we have a lot to get to, plenty of time, and I'm just gonna literally start at the beginning and ask you where you were born.
Oh my, I was born in Bedford, New York, upstate. Oh really?
Well, New York, yeah.
Oh, New York. I was like, Bedford, yeah.
Everyone in this room is from Bedford. We flew them in. Not to an acting family, correct?
No, my mother was born in 1921, so you got married and she had 8 kids, and my father was in World War II in the Navy and won a Silver Star, and he came back home and actually, my mother knew she wanted to have kids, and he came back home after World War II and was so shell-shocked that he couldn't have kids. And so he came to my mother and said, "I'm so sorry, would you like a divorce?" And she said, no, I'm going to stick with you. Well, 8 children later, she was surprised.
And you're the only actor out
Yeah.
of the 8. Do you remember when you first felt the lure to act?
I love how you nod. You're like, yeah, ask her that question. Yeah, New York. I have to say, my mother, before she got married, dabbled in acting in New York.
Mm-hmm.
She studied with Piscator, and she worked with, Jason Robards, that kind of thing. So when did I start getting the bug? Here's the thing. When I was little, I thought I wanted to be a ballerina just because I liked the outfit. And I think because I was the last of 8, I was loud and obnoxious. And so my mother said, "I don't think you're a ballerina. I think you're an actor." And she sent me to acting camp when I was about 10, which was acting camp. Actually, a couple people have gone there. It was called Beginner's Showcase. I think it's still there. And man, that was it for me. Because you're with a bunch of actors. Everyone's doing a play. You're always in the play, even if all I cared about was that I had a costume. I was in the chorus the whole time. It went up to 18, so there are all these great older actors who were like jitterbugging at night at the snack shop and smoking cigarettes and being interesting and artistic and staying up late and having boyfriends, and it had nothing to do with sports or swimming or teams or anything. It was just actors. And I went, oh, I want to be here. It's like after a show comes down, or halfway through a play when you start going, I wonder what kind of drink I'm going to have tonight with my pals. So it's like that.
What was the first proper show you were ever a part of? Do you remember?
Like that I got paid for?
Well, like the first time in this camp, as it were, the first time you had a speaking line on stage or got a laugh.
Oh my God, the first time I got a laugh, it was with a director, Bill Maher. God, I love that guy. And I was one of the, it was in Oliver, and I was one of the, Artful Dodger kind of scrappy people. And no, that's not true. I was a chorus member in No No Nanette. And I did a dance step over a guy who was a passed out bum. This is what I remember of No No Nanette, but there can't be passed out bums. And I got a laugh from the director. That's when I went, oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say there must be nothing like that first time that happens.
Yeah, because you kind of go, oh, I can please you? Oh, you like me? All those sick things that feed us for the rest of our lives, or don't feed us.
Feed us emotionally, if not financially at times. Let me ask, you said your mom was very supportive, sent you to this camp. You had a very elaborate sort of actor education. Can you talk a little bit about the formal training that you had?
Sure. So I went to that camp where we basically smoked cigarettes and did the jitterbug, which was super fun. So I can jitterbug pretty well now and smoke. Then I went to Interlochen Arts Academy, And then I did a summer at the American Academy. Then I did a program at the Royal Academy. Then and then I went to NYU. I think that sort of covers it all. And then I went to NYU and got into Circle in the Square. And then a bunch of my friends kept talking about this new thing called Practical Aesthetics Workshop, and this playwright David Mamet and his right-hand guy, William H. Macy. And I said, I heard that chuckle. I didn't touch him until I graduated. And because I'm kind of a lemming, all my friends were like, this is the cool studio. And I went, I want to go to the cool studio, knowing nothing about Mamet. I'm doing a play right now, a Mamet play. Knew nothing about it. I was like, I want to wear pretty dresses and wear makeup and be on stage. That has not been my career.
Aside from the smoking and figure out what drink you're going to have after a show, I mean, what were the things that you learned in that education that you feel sort of laid the foundation? I mean, what were sort of the methodologies you were learning in those programs?
They're really varied. The things I learned at the American Academy were not the things at all that I learned at RADA. Circle in the Square was not at all what I learned at, which is now the Atlantic Theater Company. Mm-hmm. At the time we called it Practical Aesthetics. I would say they all informed me. You know, I got to college sort of having some kind of methodology to the way I work. And certainly, time on the boards. You guys know, there's nothing like time on the boards. But the thing I guess that has influenced me the most is David Mamet mm-hmm. and Practical Aesthetics, as he calls it. It's a very specific way of working. It's certainly influenced me, but you guys know we're all going for the same thing. We're all going for truth of the moment, and that moment-to-moment work is our currency. And however you get there is kind of your job and your business. So in a funny way, whatever works for you, great. That happened to work for me. We're all ending up in the same place, God willing.
Absolutely. Speaking of Mamet, one of the greatest living, dead, ever playwrights that there has been. You guys have worked together quite a lot. I mean, you made your Broadway debut in Speed the Plow. You've worked with him countless times since. He has a very specific use of language, and I'm curious what you feel sort of meshed with your style about that.
Good God, nothing. I mean, Mamet is a genius, and I'm just normal. I was going to say a dope, but I'm just like normal intelligence, and he's a genius. So what would I say? There's no meshing. I mean, I'm doing a Mamet play right now at Theater Asylum. Do you know that? It's on, Santa Monica between Vine and Cahuenga. It's a cute little 70-seat house. You know it. You Bedford person knows everything. And it's the most difficult play I've ever done, and I think the most difficult play of his. It's called The Anarchist. Patti LuPone and Deborah Winger did it on Broadway. And his language in that is brilliant and so difficult. So what meshes with me is, I don't know. I mean, the challenge is to respect his pentameter, because it really is, to respect his language and his syntax, and yet, what he's really interested in is the truth of the human soul. Mm-hmm. That's what he wants to see on stage, not his words.
Yeah, absolutely. The experience of doing a play versus doing a television show versus doing a film in terms of preparation is infinitely different. With a play, it's the same material over and over every single night. The other one's different. I mean, for you, what have you found to be important in terms of doing a play and finding those moments and keeping them fresh show after show? Yeah.
It kind of depends on how long the run is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with a difficult play, you kind of hit your stride at about 6 months. Who's got the luxury of a 6-month run these days? She's like, how about 3 nights? I think this play now, we worked on it for 3 months in my living room before we put it up. And it needed it. And to tell you the truth, I think it needs another month of previews before we're kind of riding the skateboard properly. So your question is, when do you kind of hit your stride with the play?
Or when do you feel sort of, you have those moments of really sort of falling into the routine and the rhythm of it?
I would say usually about 2 weeks to a month after opening. But also my experience is, certainly with a play, I don't know if you guys feel this, but when you go, oh, I got it, I figured it out, I figured it out, and you go, whoosh, and then 2 weeks later you go, I thought I had it figured out, it's not working out. I mean, that just happens to me over and over. And film is so condensed that you go, if you can just do a piece of it correctly, then they have it. And if you can do this piece correctly, then they have it. But with a play, literally you go, do I put the water bottle down on that line or on this line? And in addition to how to throw the stuff, but there's also the internal stuff and then working off the other person. So it doesn't take much to dislodge me. I often feel like I'm kind of on with this play, I feel like I'm on a tightrope on a unicycle, juggling with a bear trying to attack me. And all anyone has to do is go, and I'm going, whoa, I'm off.
The endurance, whether, you don't know going in if a play, like you said, is going to last 3 shows or 3 years on some level. What have you found about the endurance required for you to be in a long-running show, to keep up your energy, to keep up your enthusiasm? What's important to you as a human being during a process like that?
Again, I really think the question is, do you have kids or do you not have kids? Because when you don't have kids and it's a gig that's actually paying you a little bit, you can kind of work your day around it. You go to bed late, you get up late, you work out, you figure out your routine so that when you get to the theater, you're ready to rock and roll. When you have kids, you hope that you've showered and you sort of remember your lines. I actually need to, this play right now, I need to run it at least twice before I show up at the theater that night. I need to do, for me it's a long run for a short slide. I put in a lot of work because I'm so frightened. I'm just so frightened all the time. So I try and bolster myself by working hard. I don't know if it works, but that's what I do.
I think it does. Very appropriately, you made your sort of film debut in a Mammoth movie in 1988.
Before any of you were born.
What do you remember about sort of the first steps from going from Broadway and the theater into television and film?
Well, I had like 2 days on that movie, and the funny part of that movie is I played this roulette girl, and I'd been starving myself, so I was thin enough, or could try to get thin enough for the thing. So I hadn't eaten in what felt like weeks, but I fit into the dress. And so I was in front of the lights, and usually they'll have stand-ins come in because the lights are so hot, but I didn't know I could have a stand-in, and I didn't want to be a problem, and Dave was sweet enough to give me this part. So they said, you want to stand in? I was like, no, I'm really fine. So I stood there while they're lighting, and I hadn't eaten in a really long time, and I felt myself going, and I was like, don't go. And they yelled, rolling. And Don Amici, rest in peace, Don Amici came over, and he said, all my chips on number 9. And I went, all right, sir. And then my eyes rolled back in my head, and I fainted behind the whole
Really?
Fainted dead away. And I came to, and there was Don Amici. It must have been like 75 or 80 at the time, going, I have that effect on women all the time. And I guess for film, I mainly did a lot of TV, and I remember I did an arc on Frasier, and I had no clue. And I remember Kelsey Grammer, who's a total prince, you guys. He's just a prince. We were working on a scene, and he went, yeah, you're not too camera savvy, are you? You don't really know what's going on. I was like, no, I really don't. It's like a play, right? And he was like, no, it's not a play at all. And it took me a long time. I wasn't camera savvy, and in Sports Night or little jobs here and there, because I didn't know it was my job, to tell you the truth. I thought my job is to be here with you,
right.
I didn't think about, hang on, there's the camera and I just didn't. And now I sort of am, but not really. It would probably behoove me to learn more about that.
Again, it seems to be working however you're doing it. I mean, speaking of, let's talk about Sports Night. One of, I think, the best comedies to be on American television in the
Aaron
last...
Sorkin,
I
come
mean,
on.
you know, it's so smart. It was so funny. In a lot of ways, I feel a little bit ahead of its time. I
Yeah,
feel
for
like
sure.
had that show aired 10 years later, 7 years later, you'd probably still be on it. Would have never done Desperate Housewives, playing Dana Whitaker, you know, in her 20th year running Sports Night. What do you remember about that pilot script when you first got it?
Well, you know how for pilot season, sort of the drumbeat goes out when there are good scripts? And all your friends are sort of going in on the same stuff. So the drumbeat went out on that one. It happened with Desperate, too. And I read it, and I'd known Aaron from New York theater, just around. You know, a bunch of my friends did A Few Good Men, and you know, he'd come to a couple plays I was in, which was really sweet, and I just knew him as sort of this handsome, cool playwright. So when I read the script and Dana Whitaker was not the lead, I thought I might just have a chance of maybe getting an audition. So I think I called a couple people to be like, could you call Aaron and just see if I could audition for the casting agent? And so I went in and auditioned for the casting agent, and then I went in and auditioned for Aaron. And I just couldn't believe that I got it. I just couldn't believe that I got it. It was so shocking.
Are you a good auditioner? Are you good in the room?
I finally got to be a good auditioner, and it took me years to figure it out. And it took my husband years to figure it out.
What do you, I mean, do you think it's something that comes from repeated exposure, or is there actually...
No.
Yeah.
I think you can have years and years of repeated exposure and still be like, those fuckers. Never get past. I think a couple things. One, a good friend of mine said, when you go into an audition, which by the way I've done, now I'm getting this on film, but if you go in and they make you wait more than an hour, which as we know happens all the time, you go in and you steal something. So I would be in and I was like, I'm taking some printer paper, I'm taking some rolls of toilet paper, I'm taking the water bottle. Because for somehow, it means when you go into the room, you're not so pissed off. You're like, hey, stole your pencils. And to tell you the truth, the other thing that had to go through my mind, because it's impossible, it's so hard. And if you work your way through all the auditions, let's say for TV, and then you're at network, and I don't know how they do network now, but you're in a room with 6 other girls who are better looking, have longer resumes, and are cooler than you. They just are. And you wait all together. You've signed your deal, by the way, which, as you know, you're like, I would be making $10,000 a week. I can't believe it. So it's really loaded up. You've gone through 6 auditions already, and you hear someone in the next room, and how you can usually hear them. So I had to figure out a way not to hate myself, not to hate everybody else, not to go, oh my God, I know I'm the best one in here. Oh my God, I know I'm the worst one in here, which, as you know, is, flip sides of the same coin. It's to stay balanced. And I know it sounds odd, but I finally had to find a spiritual place in that room because it felt like such a test of holding on to who I was. And I had to get a deeper goal than doing well in the room. Because you just can't tell if you're going to do well in the room. And it's like going, my goal today is to be good. Well, you're screwed if that's your goal. So I knew my goal was, to be alive in the scene, to tell the truth in the scene. But that didn't really even carry me through, because for me that's a very thin membrane to, I want to be true in the scene because I want to be good. So this might sound odd, but I really had to go deep down into, I want everyone, these 6 girls, those 20 people in the room, fuck them for having my future in their hands. I wanted them all to be blessed. And I wanted for everybody's good to come out of this. And I would sit there and sit in it and really sit in gratitude, but not like I'm a worm gratitude, but from that place of gratitude. I really want everyone to be blessed. I want the best thing to happen for everybody. I want these people, the 20 people in the room, because they're scared too. Wait till you're on the other side, you know? They're like, please walk in the door, please walk in the door. I want them to be blessed, and it sort of shifted it for me. I don't know, I'm embarrassed saying that, but that's true.
No, I think that's great. Obviously, whatever the plan was worked for Sports Night. You got the role of Dana Whitaker. It was interesting.
And I that was one of the first ones that I went, and I just prayed and was centered.
I mean, she is, as we know her now, an incredibly complex character, a really interesting woman. When you first started, do you remember what you were drawn to about her?
It was a job. A job! You kidding? I would have taken anything. I mean, of course, it's Aaron Sorkin. Aaron's brilliant. His writing is brilliant and funny. And my husband, who read the script, who is very discerning and doesn't like very much, was like, wow, this is the real deal. So, sure, I was attracted to that, but really what I liked is I might get a job on TV.
What was the, you know, that was, you know, major first jobs for yourself, for Peter Krause, for Josh Charles, for Josh Molina. I mean, this was like, you know, this is where they started when they're on, you know, talk shows now. What was it like on set? Did you guys all mesh very well as actors? Was there a lot of rehearsal time for that?
There was really no rehearsal time. We did mesh really well. I adored Peter. We had Tommy Schlamme at the helm as well, and I would basically walk through fire for Tommy Schlamme. And it was a bunch of young actors, and we had long, long nights, because it wasn't, you know, we started out with an audience, but then it wasn't, so we'd get finished, you know, Saturday morning at like 7 or 8. But everyone was playing basketball outside and hanging out. I was just really playing practical jokes on people, horrible, horrible practical jokes. I mean, you know, you drive up and you have a parking space with your name on it. Come on. There's craft service. I had to learn about craft service. The first time I hit craft service, I did something in the X-Files, and it was when it was very beginning, and I went up to Vancouver, and I went on set, and I went, this is free? And they went, yeah, and I went, yes. And I was there about 10 days, and I could not fit into the same pair of pants that I flew there in, because I was like, hey, I'm taking you back to my hotel room.
The X-Files fed you for 10 days.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the audience, because for those who don't know, there's like a shift in the show where there's a laugh track from a live audience, and then one episode, and then the next episode, it's not. And I think it allowed the jokes to play better, to be honest.
Oh, for sure.
To not have that. But, you know, it strikes me that that was the result of network tinkering and figuring out what worked. As an actor in a situation like that, did you have to learn to sort of shut out all the outside noise when that's happening and just try to focus on your job? Or did you kind of let all of the machinations of being on a network show and your ratings and your time slot and all of that stuff sort of find its way in?
No, I never did. I know other actors did and would sort of go, oh, could you believe how they edited that scene? And I'd go, what do you mean? I'm oblivious, and I think there's an upside and a downside to that. There's not a whole lot you can do unless you're a producer, and I've seen actors just twist themselves into knots over, I can't believe they did it that way, or I can't believe we're going to switch time slots, or the actor across from me is so blah, 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 and they're not allowing me to do this and that, and I try and sort of distance myself from that as much as possible.
If you do that,
sounds like I'm Yoda. I'm not at all. I'm totally hysterical and freaked out on set. I'm bad.
I mean, for a show that you loved with a cast you adored, you know, what happens for you as an actor when that time ends? If you've sort of been able to keep your distance from that side of it, is it easier, or do you find it as difficult any time whenever a job ends?
Oh, I mean, depending on the job, yeah, I hate the endings. One, I'm not very good at change. And two, you have that, I mean, that's why I love TV, because in a way it's like theater, you know, you have your kind of green room and you have your community and everybody hangs out and there are fights and then you make up. And I love the group, so when the group is over, it's very hard.
Yeah.
And also, you know, as actors or whatever, as freelancers, you know, your last job is always your last job. And you're like, I'll never work again. And indeed, sometimes one doesn't work for a very long time.
Do you have a mourning process when a job ends, or do you instantly let go of a character?
Oh, yeah. That's not,
Doesn't
I
stay
don't
with
have
you?
a mourning process except for mourning the paycheck.
Well,
I'm a thief and I'm greedy. That's what you guys are going to take away from this.
You know, you've been very candid about sort of the in-between moments, the times between jobs, which I think is really refreshing for actors to hear, because when you see a successful actor and they're like, oh, it's easy and this happened all the time, and I think you've been great in
Do
your...
people actually say that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
It was easy?
There are people who don't acknowledge sometimes the struggle and the true
Maybe it
reality
wasn't a
of
struggle for
acting.
them.
But you know, I thought it was great. Like when you won your Golden Globe in 2005, you said, you know, the second time I didn't work for a year, I gave up on any dream that looked like this. And when you were promoting Transamerica, you said there were a couple of times in my career where people have gone, you know, this is it, fasten your seatbelt, it's going to happen. And that was inevitably followed by a year of not working and going on unemployment. What is it about your drive to perform that powers you through those moments?
When you're not working? Gosh, it's so hard, ain't it? In all honesty, I'm not really good at anything else, so I've got nothing to fall back on. I'm really good at drinking tea in bed, but I can't seem to get paid for it. I think some kind of tenacity. You know, I have to say you know, my husband didn't work for 2 years before Shameless, and he came to me after about a year and a half, and he said, I think I'm done. And at that point, you kind of have to honor it and go, I get it. I think you might be done. And I said, so what do you want to do now that you're done? Let's grasp the nettle. And he said, I want to go to carpenter school in New Hampshire. And I went, okay, let's do it. So, you know, he looked online and was going for carpenter school, and then, you know, Shameless came along. But there is always that time when you go, get a new dream. You got to get a new dream. And that's a serious question and must be entertained. I know that doesn't answer your question, how do you keep it going? I mean, I remember, I've talked about this, but I was working quite a bit in New York, and I got an OB for this play I did, and you know, finally at casting agents, I'd walk in and they'd go, oh, nice to see you, or I had an agent. And I moved out to LA to be with my boyfriend, Bill Macy, and I could not fucking get arrested. Are you allowed to swear on this?
Yes, you're
I guess
good.
so.
Yes, you can say arrested.
And I just remember, thank you. And I remember going, okay, it's time to get a new dream. And so I drove. Do you guys remember Marinello's School of Beauty on Beverly? Sort of. It's still there? Oh, it is? Still there. Huh. Okay, so I pulled into Marinello's School of Beauty because I'd always done my friend's hair, and I was like, I'm going to be a hairdresser. I love it. It's the same kind of community. I get to talk to people. So I went in and got an application for Marinello's School of Beauty, and I brought it back to my car, and my phone rang. And I got a Showtime gig. So I don't know what gets you through. In a way, I sort of go, I think the best thing to do is to sink down to the bottom and go, okay, if I can't do this, what else do you want to do? And I've been there a bunch of times. My husband's been there a bunch of times. He goes, I'm done with acting. I'm going to write now. So then he writes, I'm done with acting. I'm going to direct now. Because it just happens, and sometimes you go, seriously, we're going to quit. And if you quit, great, and find something else, and if you don't. But I guess my advice would be to sink down, grasp, and walk your demons, man. Walk your demons.
I mean, obviously, sort of finding yourself in those moments, you definitely have to look at the other work you've done. And I think it's kind of incredible because, you know, in the Sports Night era, you had gone from working with David Mamet, you had worked just with Aaron Sorkin, and you'd also done a Paul Thomas Anderson film. And I'm curious because, you know, those are three creators who have such an attention to specificity in language. I mean, the impression I get, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you have a script from any one of those three gentlemen, you do not change a syllable or an article or preposition. There's no room for improvisation. Fair to say?
Yeah.
I mean, as an actor, do you appreciate sort of the confines of something like that, or do you find yourself wanting to sort of break free and improvise in those moments?
Well, you know, having really been trained by a playwright, I have been trained never to change the words. And Aaron was the same way, and Paul Thomas Anderson actually will allow a little improv. But I guess having been trained that way, I'm not great at improv. I also have to say, you have to be really talented to be good at the improv. And the problem is, everybody thinks they are, and they're not. And the other problem is, we as actors, or I should say I as an actor, but I think it's true of all, you want to be comfortable. And the nature of being in a scene, if it's well written, is that you're uncomfortable because the character is trying to get something that they don't have. Love, money, whatever it is. So what we do with the language is, and you see it with young actors all the time, is they add handles to make it comfortable. And everyone talks about, is that comfortable for you? Are you comfortable with that? Well, if you're comfortable with it, you're in trouble. So they add hey, you know, I just really want it. And the line is, I just really want it. And they add, hey, you know, because it's more comfortable and it kind of lets you slide into the line. But I think where you will find us brought to life and where you'll find the difficulty of artistry is do not let yourself off the hook. So if the moment is that it's uncomfortable, instead of going, I want to make this comfortable, hey, you know, I sit with the discomfort and go, I really want to be let off the line, or whatever it is, because that brings you to life, and the comfort just kind of blurs everything. Did I answer anything you said?
I don't know, but I loved everything you talked about, so it works.
I have to say, you know, usually I talk about acting, and I try not to because I can see people's eyes roll back in their head and they lose their will to live. But I assume since you're all in the biz that you won't, but feel free to have your eyes roll back in your head and take a nap.
Well, you know, one of sort of the biggest shows that was on television in the last 20 years was Desperate Housewives.
Yeah.
That was a juggernaut I would assume no one felt was coming when you read that script. Not to say it was a bad script, but it was a very, but I mean, whoever predicts that kind of insane success? I mean, 8 seasons, 180 episodes of television. That does not happen anymore. No. Starting at the beginning.
We killed it.
That's right. It would still be on if ABC had its druthers. What do you remember about that script, that pilot script, or sort of that pilot season?
Well, like Sports Night, you heard the drum beats go out about this script, Desperate Housewives. And I had 2 small kids, so I sort of heard about it, but not really. And a friend of mine, actually Jennifer Gray, came over because our kids were playing together, and she went, have you read this script? You should read this script. You should go in on it. And I went, okay, yeah. So I remember reading the script and liking it. They wanted me to go in for Lynette. I, of course, wanted to be the Hispanic supermodel, but they weren't saying that. And what I remember is we shot the pilot, and I was preoccupied, and I had no idea, you know. And also, I just assumed, because I've shot a lot of pilots, that it's not going to go. It's never going to go. I remember for the audition, I realized I had to pull myself together, and my kids were like 1 and 2 at the time. So I pulled myself together. I did my hair really nicely. I put on nice pants. I had my nice shirt, makeup, et cetera, et cetera. And I go in, and I auditioned, and Mark Cherry later told me, he was like, I knew when you walked in the door. I knew when you started acting. I went, because it was good? And he went, no, because you're such a total mess. You had stains on your pants, and your shirt was buttoned crooked, and your hair was a mess. And I went, oh. He's like, you were a real mom. But you know, when I saw that pilot, it wasn't like I went, yeah, it's fantastic. I sort of went, I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. But it's good I'm not in charge.
I mean, as an actor, I think moments like that kind of remind you of the lightning in a bottle effect that, you know, this industry has.
So lucked out.
I mean, do you feel like you've sort of come to a place where you have to say, like, I'm going to just do my best work, and you can't worry about sort of the response or the reaction to something like that? Or do you sort of think about, and I hope, you know, this has this kind of effect on the people who watch it?
Do you mean while I'm doing it, I hope it's successful, or what do you mean?
I just mean, you know, obviously there's always an intent behind a performance, you know, from an acting point of view, but from a business point of view, which is obviously another part of this industry,
sure.
You have to think about, well, how marketable is this project, or how many people will this, you know, speak to? Is there any part of that that goes into your process?
Not really. They probably should. No, I don't. But you know, I haven't really produced any TV, so it's not, I'm always on the sort of like, can I have a job end? I guess if I was producing television, I would sort of go, hang on, is this going to fit into a niche? Mm-hmm. What market are we trying to hit? Who's going to watch this? But as an actor, I haven't been.
It's interesting that you were saying sort of how you came into that audition, because I think there was obviously, as Mark noted, great likenesses with Lynette, the character. When you sort of got to dig into her over the course of that first season and the subsequent 7 years, I mean, what was it about her as a person that you enjoyed playing?
I enjoyed her realistic struggles with motherhood. That's what I felt like was a service. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought, at least I could bring to it that I totally understood, because I found motherhood baffling and impossible and a lot of times horrible. And I think when I would talk to Mark, I would talk about that. And, you know, there was a scene in the first season where Lynette's I think she's taking Ritalin a lot.
Right, the ADHD.
And then she runs out of it, and it's a scene on a soccer field with Terry and Marcia. And that, I remember reading it, and I went to Mark, and it was a lovely scene. I went to Mark and I said, it's really good, it's not exactly what goes on. And I said, what exactly goes on is you feel sorry for your kids that they have you as a mother. And he went, oh. So that kind of thing, I appreciated the honesty of playing Lynette that way.
Yeah, you know, because I have to say, obviously there were largely soapy elements, the murders and the tornadoes and the planes crashing on the street in Connecticut. But like you're saying, you know, the ADHD medication, I mean, you dealt with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yeah. There was the demands of going back to work after being, you know, a stay-at-home mom. There was the grief of losing a child you were pregnant with. I mean, there was a lot of really interesting conversations that were started and presented on this show that spoke to, at times, upwards of 20 million people. Yeah. I mean, how does it make you feel that you were able to sort of talk about these things on such a large platform through your art?
I guess it feels great, and on a macro level, you hope you do them justice. You know, when Lynette was going through cancer, I just wanted to do it truthfully, so that those people who were going through that, or had a loved one who was going through that, felt that it was accurate. Maybe it wasn't exactly their experience, but they understood it, and it was somewhat truthful. Of course, the motherhood thing was close to me. You know, the whole losing the child thing. My main concern is I feel the responsibility of, I've got a storyline which will affect people because it might be happening in their life, so I just want to do it justice so it's truthful.
I think, you know, working on a character for 8 years is something very few actors really ever get the opportunity to do.
So lucky.
But I mean, it probably also presents a bit of a logistical challenge on some level. I mean, that is a very long time to play one person's arc. I mean, what did you discover about sort of your process, or for her specifically, that you needed to do in order to continue to bring her to life?
I don't know that I needed to do anything. I mean, what's great about television is every 8 days you get a little one-act play. And you get to figure out how to do it. And the other wonderful thing is, you know, sometimes you go, wow, I did that scene so badly, but you have an opportunity in a day or two to try to do something better, or you go, oh, I did that so well, and then you fail. So I always felt really challenged going to work. I always felt really grateful going to work. God, I would pull into that Universal lot just going, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I always loved it. And you know, as I said earlier, you know, it always comes down to our currency is the moment. Mm-hmm. Not really the big picture, it's the moment. So that has to be alive no matter if it's season 1 or season 7.
Whether it's Lynette or another character, do you, I mean, in your process, do you journal? Do you use music to find a character? Or do you just sort of use the words and the costumes and use that as your entry point into a person? It's a great question. I'm pretty specific about it. You know, I think action defines character, not the other way around. I like that you're nodding back there. Action defines character. So my shoes don't define the character. What I had for breakfast doesn't define the character for me. But it also will define everything else. So if my character is coming to speak to actors, I don't have an objective tonight. Okay, if I'm coming to give a lecture about oral hygiene to people who don't take care of their teeth, right? My objective is to enlighten these people, or to educate these people, or to teach these people. Well, then I can figure out, okay, well, what do I need in order to teach? Well, I need their respect. Okay, so what do you wear to have someone's respect? Well, I'm not going to come in holy jeans because this guy's my person's a hippie. I would come in respectful clothes. And what else would you have? Well, I'd want to look approachable. So for me, action defines everything. So that's where I always start. I try and start as a craftsman. And I feel like if I can build it as a craftsman, then if the muse descends, I'm super lucky. If it doesn't, I have some solid things to stand on. But I never wanted to be out there with a bare ass going, I hope I feel it tonight, man. The show, the phenomenon that was the show, is something you very rarely see in television. I mean, in any sort of pop culture medium at this time. You know.
Empire's like that now.
Yeah, kind of is having that moment. I mean, what was it like to be at the center of something like that? Is it another situation where you just kind of have to shut the noise out, or was it fun? It was
so crazy. It was so crazy. I mean, we were somewhat sheltered because we just had to go to work, but it was work and then press every weekend. And then you could just kind of hear the roar, and also driving down Sunset, and there's like a huge billboard of us. And it was also instantaneous. Well, not so much for me. I don't know why people don't recognize me, but like Marcia and Eva and Terry, I mean, they'd get followed and people would stop them and people would be outside their houses. And so it was this phenomenon. And also you can feel the pressure, but it's good pressure, but it's still pressure. It was a real whirlwind, I have to say. There was a great, you won an Emmy for that role, which is not shocking, it's pretty incredible. Well, that's very fun. And in your speech, you thanked your husband for taking a chunky 22-year-old with the bad permanent glasses into a cow pasture and kissing me and making me his wife, which was so sweet and adorable. Aww.
But I'm curious, that is a very
How
interesting...
chunky were you? What?
No, that is a different medium entirely. Different thing. But I'm curious, because it brings up an interesting point to use that moment to say that when you're on a show and, there's at the Emmys, which is Hollywood's most glamorous night, and, everyone's in dresses that no one owns and jewels they have to return the next day. I think it was a really apt statement, whether or not you meant to do this or not, about sort of the artifice of it all. And I'm curious, how you felt becoming sort of a part of that for the first time, and sort of in the industry of Hollywood and how it churns like that.
Oh my God, it was crazy. I mean, yes, I remember going to photo shoots and kind of showing up with a different colored t-shirt. Is this good? I didn't know that, they'd have racks of clothes. I didn't know. I mean, I had to borrow. Yes, no one wanted to dress me for that show. So I went to our costume designer, was like, I have a friend, Kevin Hall, maybe he'll give you a dress. Wonderful designer, Kevin Hall, who very sweetly brought me in. But the glamour is like a whole lesson in and of itself. It's kind of like auditioning. You got to figure out how to do it, because you walk down, maybe you guys know, but you walk down those red carpets and you totally feel like a fraud. I mean, you're just going, I don't belong here, I'm really sorry. I know my dress is stupid, sorry. And learning how to pose, oh my God, watching Terry Hatcher on a red carpet, I went, oh, that's how it's supposed to be done. I mean, she's fantastic at it. So that was a whole education in and of itself.
Is it strange, sort of, when you have those moments and say, this is now part of my job too? I guess so. Yeah. I mean, you do it enough that you go, I gotta get better at this. I just gotta get better at it, because it's torture otherwise. And actually, I remember talking to Kate Adair, who was the wonderful costume designer for Desperate, and I was kind of going, I don't want to go, don't make me go. And she said, you have got to figure this out. I said, I don't know how. And she said, it's got to be a part, have it be a part that you play. And I said, what? And she goes, just pretend you're a queen. Just pretend you're a queen or you're royalty. And I went, oh, okay. She goes, yeah, you were born into it. You probably don't deserve it. All that's true, but you got to play the part. And I was like, oh, okay. And that really helped me. I love that. I mean, and I think that idea is sort of kind of perfectly demonstrated by the fact that one of the roles you took during your time on Desperate Housewives was in the absolutely incredible film Transamerica.
Oh.
And I watched an interview you did where you sort of illustrated the difference, where you were like, it took me 15 minutes to get ready for that film, and it would take 50 minutes, to get ready for Desperate Housewives.
Yeah.
Anyone who's seen the film probably could answer this question, but what was it about that story that made you want to tell it?
Oh my God, that character. I mean, the fact that she's, first of all, when I read that screenplay, I knew nothing about the transgendered community, and this was 10, 11 years ago. So you think they're marginalized now. I mean, they were really like, who are those people? That's weird. And I felt that way too. I was like, boy, they're other. What's going on? And the fact that this person had the courage and just the challenge of being a woman, playing a man, becoming a woman, and talking to the wonderful Duncan Tucker, who wrote and directed it. I just thought, I read it and I went, yeah, sign me up. I have no idea how to do it, but sign me up.
How did you then do it? No. Because the interesting thing, like you're saying, is a woman playing a man wanting to become a woman. What was important to you, first of all, from a physicality standpoint in playing Brie?
Well, here's something interesting. I read a lot of biographies. I watched a lot of documentaries, anything I could get my hands on. There's this wonderful thing. Do you guys know about the Lucas Library? George Lucas Library? I was doing this tiny part on something, and this wonderful, man, I'm telling you, hair and makeup know everything. And I was going, I just got this movie Oh, I know what it was. It was like Christmas with the Cranks that I had like 3 days on. And Joy, this wonderful makeup artist, I was like, I have this thing, I don't know anything about transgender. And she goes, you don't know about the Lucas Library? And I said, no. It's this, George Lucas sits up in, Sonoma or wherever he is. You call up and you go, hi, I'm doing a part about transgender and I don't know anything about it. And they go, hold on. And they send you stuff. And boom, there it is in front of you. And you're like, oh, I'm going to read that book. And you find all these great things. It's a fabulous resource, the Lucas Library, and these wonderful real librarians who are brilliant. I have no idea what your question was.
The physicality.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
So then I read all this stuff, and then I found a woman who helped, because a lot of times when men transition to women, it's later in life when they have the resources to do it, and also the courage, particularly back then. So she coaches men about what it's like to be a woman just physically. And here's something interesting. Men naturally take up a lot of space. They naturally sit kind of like this. Or, they'll stand, they stand like this. And when they listen like this. Women don't take up as much space, right? That we're always in here. And when they listen, they encourage. They go, uh-huh, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, right? So all the nodding is women. Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Yeah, there's a sense of community. So when men are becoming women, they have to learn because you're dressed up like a woman, but you're doing this. And girls are going, that's a really weird signal. What's going on? So the physicality came from starting from a male place, as if I was big, and having to bring it in. It's interesting what that means politically, but anyway.
You've talked a little bit about the research that you did. What was important to you in sort of understanding everything that went into who this person was before you even got to dealing with the character itself?
Sort of essentially? Mm-hmm. This is what I really tuned into. You know that deep well, I hope you guys don't go, no. And if you do, that's okay. That deep well of pain and despair that we all carry around. Do you know that feeling of when you wake up in the morning and you go, God, I just can't believe I'm still me? That sort of innate reservoir of self-loathing. And not that Bree was self-loathing, but she woke up going, this is not right. And so that was where I got it. And when I worked with a wonderful woman where I finally figured out the voice, she's a wonderful coach named Katie Bull, who I still work with every project I can. I'd work with a bunch of coaches on the voice because it's really hard, particularly men who are older, to get their voice to sound like a woman and not sort of be like, hi, how you doing? And I'd been to a couple people and I couldn't get it. And I worked with Katie Bull. I went to New York and she said, well, let's not think about what it's going to sound like. And I said, okay. She goes, let's think about where she's coming from. And where she's coming from is loneliness and feeling hollow and a lot of sadness. And so we worked on that. And then we found the voice, which I thought was sort of interesting.
Were you able to go in and out of it, or did you sort of have to keep it up the entire time?
Yeah, I'd have to go there in the morning. It took a long warm-up, and then I'd have to stay there. And my husband finally said, you have to stop calling me in the middle of the day. Because I'd call up in my deep voice, be like, how are the kids? How are the kids? He'd be like,
her journey is very harrowing throughout the film, if ultimately uplifting. But I'm curious, what were you like during the production of that movie? Did it permeate your daily experience?
I don't know, because it's all I did. I know that my back and my neck totally went out. So I was walking around New York like this, because I couldn't move my head. Any kind of jarring, so I'd walk down the street like this. I don't know, I was in it all the time. Yeah. I don't know what I was like.
So, that sort of on some level also answers the question.
I guess so, yes.
One of the many sort of accolades you received for the film was an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress.
Yes.
What is
that was so fucking cool, you guys.
I was gonna say, what is that like? That call, that morning of the nominations. I mean, what goes through your head when your publicist or whomever, or if you're watching live, which people don't like to admit to?
I, honest to God, I was not.
Okay, I believe you. What is it like when that call comes? And
Are you kidding? It's like your dream. You've been dreaming of it your whole life, and then you've had the stuffing knocked out of you so many times that you're like, I just super like a job. Or, a good rehearsal. God, give me a little play somewhere. I'll take a good rehearsal, which is great because, you just get grateful for the small things. But man, that happened and it was just fantastic. That morning was awesome. Bill and I were asleep and the phone rang. I was kind of aware, but not because I was really trying to keep it at arm's length. And the phone rings at like 5 or 5. It's super early. And I went, God, who's calling? And Bill rolled over and went, congratulations, honey, and went back to sleep.
The combination of Desperate Housewives being so huge at that point and this Oscar nomination, I mean, that feels like, as an actor, a huge moment, just to have what one would perceive to be a lot of clout or momentum behind them. What did you find changed professionally for you after that experience? Not so much in your process, but in how you navigated Hollywood.
I was super hot after that for about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. Got a lot of scripts. And now I don't get any scripts. I'm not kidding. So it's kind of that thing you go through when you're younger as well. If you go, this is how it's always going to be. This is fantastic. And there's a part of you that goes, this has a very short shelf life. How did I navigate it? I think I'm not sure I navigated very well. And I'll tell you why. I think if I was like cool, like Elizabeth Banks or something, I would have jumped on it and, started producing my own work and doing that kind of stuff. But I was doing Desperate Housewives and I had 2 small kids. And I was like, the water was here. And I don't think I grabbed, I guess that's what I do differently. I'd grab the brass ring a little different as opposed to like, yay, it's a party. I would go, it's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, you were on a huge show that continued to be huge for quite a long time before eventually ending in 2012. And it was very well known that it was sort of a group decision and it was everyone's sort of collective wish at that point.
Yeah, everyone meaning Mark Cherry, but whatever.
Would you still be on Desperate Housewives if it was up to you?
Sure, absolutely. You kidding? In a skinny instant.
So how difficult was it to recognize that the end of that time was happening?
Well, he'd sort of prepped us, and we knew it was last year. He said, I want to write backwards, so this is the last year. So we all knew. That last night, I think it was someone's wedding. It was... you guys know. Whose wedding was it? Vanessa's. I think it was Vanessa's wedding.
Oh, on the show, yes.
That was the last scene I shot. And it was just weird. It's like graduating from high school or something. You're like, this is the last time I'm going to put this in my locker. This is the last time I'm going to go into biology class. A lot of lasts.
I'm sure for a little while there's the idea of like, oh, this is amazing to sleep in. It's amazing to have so much time with my family. Is there a point after that where you're sort of like, oh God, I need to act, I need to do something? Or did you sort of really get to bask in the fact that you'd worked so hard for 8 years and deserved a little time to coast?
I really liked the time, and I remember Allison Janney, the great Allison Janney, said it's going to feel really good for about a year and a half, and then you're going to hit the wall and go, but I didn't. I wonder if that means I'm a dilettante. Drinking tea in bed, right? I didn't. I did a play. I don't know. I didn't. I miss it and I love it, but I never had that like, oh, where is it?
In an interview in 2010, you said, now at the age I am, I either play the mother or the attorney. What did you...
When did I say that?
You said it in a Tavis Smiley interview in 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, what was your experience when you came out of Desperate Housewives and sort of saw what was then available to you? Were you excited by the opportunities that were presented to you?
Sometimes. I mean, I did a wonderful pilot that I loved with John Wells, written by Davy Holmes. I did a play at the Mark Taper. There have been some wonderful opportunities. I don't know. You know, in a funny way, I'm really, really competitive, but on the other hand, sort of not competitive. You know, people are always saying, you really have to call your agent, and why aren't you getting in these scripts, and you really have to tune them up. And I sort of go, geez, I just figure I'm pretty hard to sell. You know, it's not like you sort of go, people are banging down your door and you're just not answering. You just sort of go, I guess what's coming is what's coming. I wish I was more in demand, but I'm not, and I'm okay with that.
But as you were saying, there were projects available, and I'm curious if you felt a need or a desire to do something 180 degrees different from
Well, for sure, yeah. I mean, you want to do that, one, because you want the audience to see you different, and two, you want to do the project justice, so they're not going, there's Lynette being a fireman, and there's Lynette being an attorney.
Would watch both of those shows, by the way.
What's that?
I would watch both of those shows.
Damn, again, I'm mismanaging my career. Yeah, so that's why I think when I did a pilot, which I thought was really different for John Wells, which didn't end up going, and that's why I thought American Crime I thought would be different.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because first of all, what an insanely good show. Your performance on this show is, like you were saying, 180 degrees away. I mean, you know, again, I feel like when you see, you know, written by John Ridley on the front of a script, you're like, great, there you go, I'm in.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's just another sort of course moment.
Yes, as long as it's not Lynette being a fireman.
But
yeah, but absolutely, yeah, it all starts with, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
Absolutely.
And yes, John Ridley is brilliant, and I really wanted to work with him.
When you read the script, I mean, this is a very challenging show. It's a very challenging subject matter. It's a very challenging character. Are all of those sort of things that just make you want to do it?
Yes, not challenging, but if it's good.
Yeah.
I always look for a good story, because I think that's what we want as an audience. Like, what happens next? What happens next if it's a good story? So I look for a good story. And then, you know, we just had the pilot script, and my concern with that character was, you know, there's a woman, she's a woman who's there to do one thing, or at least that's what I thought. She's there to do one thing, which is to get justice for her son. And what I didn't understand is, I'm here to get justice for my son, and then turning to Tim Hutton going, and you really fucked me over, you're an asshole. And I said, how can a woman who is so dedicated this way have the time to go, hey, you know what? And I was worried that would come off. I didn't want her to just be, it rhymes with snitch. That's right, I say fuck all the time, but not that word. Because then you just write her off.
Yeah.
So I talked a lot to my husband about it, and figured out a sort of, and I was trying to figure out a way to skin the cat, that I could do one thing, have one objective, and anything that got in my way, I'd be like, just like that. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't ever, except for one scene, it wasn't ever like, fuck you, but it was just like, out of my way, out of my way. Mm-hmm. It's because she's monomaniacal. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, I think if you can find some humanity in Barb, that's what it is, because her motives are noble. It's just how she goes about it is not great.
Well, that's what I was going to say that I found really compelling. You know, in watching the pilot, you think, this is going to be a character that I am going to struggle to root for or to sympathize with or to have any empathy for whatsoever beyond the fact she's, you know, mourning her child. But I think you've done a really fantastic job of creating that sense of empathy through the character. And I'm curious if that was for you in just what you're saying, sort of finding that emotional like center for her and where all of the potential maliciousness is coming from is actually a good place.
Yes. I mean, I had to go back to Action Defines Character. She's there to save her son, even though her son is dead. She's there to get justice for her son. So I had to, a lot of the times, because I was so driven, people's reactions to Barb, I'd go, but what do you mean? Why is everyone mad at me? What did I say? And even on the set, I remember going into the wardrobe fitting. I think we were on episode 3 or 4, and she was like, woo, boy, here comes Barb. She's hard to take. And I sort of went, ha, ha, ha. And then she said something like it again. And I said, I really appreciate that, but it really gets in my way because I can't worry about people liking her because then I'm not doing justice to John's script.
Mm-hmm. You had the luxury in this instance of shooting the whole of American Crime before any of it aired.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, you have been working on television during a very interesting time in which there's been the rise of social media and the way audiences react with actors and interact with actors. When you're talking about not being able to hear that from somebody who worked on your show, I would imagine it was so much more lovely than sometimes the audience when they get upset at someone or the things you'll hear on social media. For you, how do you use that as a platform as an actor? Do you find that you kind of have to shut it out except for very limited instances?
You mean the noise of social media with a character? Well, when I was doing Desperate, I really wasn't on social media all that much. It only happened afterwards. But I remember going around, people going, wow, Lynette's a bitch. And I'd go, you'd hear it a lot. And it wasn't helpful. Although, they get to feel how they feel about it. But just for me, it wasn't helpful because then I start going, how can I make Lynette likable? And that's just not our job as actors. It's certainly our desire as actors, but it's not our job. The social media I tune it out. I think it's cool if Barb ignites people. I think that's a good thing, and I think she should ignite people. And I hope it's more complicated than just she's a bigot. Mm-hmm. I went into a bank the other day and I was opening up my girls, they have these teenage accounts that you can get so that they learn about money. And so you have to sit there with them. A very nice man was helping me and he said, okay, so what do you do? And I said, I'm an actress. And he goes, okay, well, what have you done? And I said, well, I've done a little bit of TV. And he said, okay, well, what? And I said, I was in a show called Desperate Housewives. And he goes, okay, I never saw it. I said, it's in some place, you're okay, and what are you doing now? And I said, I'm doing a show called American Crime, and he went, I don't like you. Like that. And I went, okay.
You're like, that's what we're going for, this is great. We took some questions from the room, and so I'm going to go through them now.
All right.
The first question is from Anne, and she would like to know.
Where's Anne? Oh, is this your question?
I don't know.
Is there a role or type of
You guys
character
made it up.
you would love to play?
This is from Charisse.
No.
Okay.
This is from no. Is there a role or type of character you would love to play?
Is that your question?
That is my question. Yeah. I didn't know if there was another Anne.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Here's what I would like to do. I'd like to do a Western where I actually get to ride and be the cowboy or the cowgirl. And I would love to do a period piece. A period piece like a Merchant Ivory film, a period piece where you have big dresses and you speak in an English accent. I'd love to do those. I mean, I'm sure it's so far away from me that everyone's like, you're not going to do that, but that's what I would like to do.
I like that.
Thanks, Anne.
Camille would like to know, throughout your accomplished career, were there ever times where you felt spent or tired? And if so, how did you motivate yourself to continue pursuing your career?
Boy, ain't that the truth. Are you there now?
A little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. What did I do? Okay, so I'm just going to go back. The first thing I did is, it's almost, sometimes it's more painful to sort of doggy paddle to keep your head above the water. It's almost like the struggle to have it be okay is more painful than the underneath fear of that it's not okay. So the first thing I do is I sink down, really down into, okay, I'm a failure. Okay, it's over. Boom. Now what? Now what do you want to do? And that I could sort of stand on it, even if it was really low, and sort of go, I'd like to, I took a class at the Groundlings. I went in and took a class at the Groundlings with all these 12-year-olds. Super embarrassing. I started a website. I don't know, now what do you want to do? So I guess my answer is not, you can do it. My answer is, go to the bottom and then figure out what you want to do.
Our next question is from Stephen.
Happens to me all the time.
Stephen would like to know.
Where's Stephen? Hi, Stephen.
We have a two-part question. What was the best thing about working with Aaron Sorkin, and what was the most challenging thing about working with Aaron Sorkin?
God, there are a couple best things about working with Aaron Sorkin. He loves actors, and he loves the process. I mean, at the beginning of Sports Night, he would show up in a shirt and a tie every day just because he was really respectful. Of course, then the hours started getting long and everybody just came in their pajamas. But he loves actors and he loves the process and he's dedicated to it. And also his writing, when you have good writing, it makes you good. It's just like acting across from someone who's good. It just raises the level of your game. And he's really kind and also really funny. I mean, you'd go into his office and he'd always had candy there and he'd always have cigarettes and you'd always kind of hang out. But mainly that he's just so damn talented. And I think the hardest thing about working with Aaron is just that he's a perfectionist. He did have a room full of writers, but of course it's really his voice. So, it's all last minute. By the end, it got to be last minute because he was working so hard. I mean, he was always the first one there and the last one to leave. His car was always there. But one man, it was 2 full seasons. So that's what was hard is you'd get the script and be like, okay, I'm going to act this in 15 minutes. Like that.
Wow. Joe would like to know if there was any hesitancy on your part before taking on the role of Barbara in American Crime.
Because she's so harsh. It's so funny. I know she is, but I guess like all harsh people, they don't think they are. We all don't know how we come off. That was my little sadness about Barb being harsh. My hesitation was what I said. I just didn't want her to come off as a bitter, bitchy woman. And I know you're probably thinking, but she is kind of a bitter, bitchy woman. But I think you would say she's more driven than that. She doesn't take after people for spite. She doesn't take after people just because she's mean. She takes after people if they get in her way. And that interested me, a woman with really, as I said, noble motives, and just everything she touches gets broken, So my only hesitation was that trap. And so that was my only hesitation.
Zan, I hope I'm okay, great. What is your favorite
XAN?
What is your favorite passion project, and what did you get to do that made it so special for you?
That I've actually done? A passion project. Wow, hold on. Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Or if you have one in the future going forward.
Well, a passion project seems like you're you're the source of it. And so always as an actor, you kind of go, can I have the job? And then they give you the job. I mean, there's certainly jobs that I was passionate about. I really wanted Sports Night. But I would say a passion project now is this website I started called What the Flicka. And that's been a passion and challenging, and I'm really committed, and then I'm really quit the band the next day, and that's interesting because it's so out of my comfort zone.
What is it?
It's called whattheflicka.com. It's a site for parents and mainly moms, and it was just mainly because I came out of Desperate with the fans were the moms, which I was so honored to be a part of. And that combined with growing up with 7 girls in my family, I'm really comfortable with like being around women, and you all sit on the counters or in the kitchen and talking, or in the bathroom counters. And so I wanted to create that virtual reality to have a safe place where parents could come and share their experiences. It sounds boring, but it's not. What the Flicka, WTF, like, yeah, www, what the Flicka. Flicka's my nickname.
Ryan has a question about Transamerica, and
Where's Ryan?
I'm sorry, it's a novel.
it's okay. I'm gonna edit. I hope that's all right.
It's a novel.
It-
Chapter 2.
he wants to know, was there ever a moment when you were making the movie where you thought there was no way I can do this? And if you did, how did you pull yourself back from that?
God, yes, there were so many of them. The moment that I really lost it, and you know, we made that movie for $2, and we made it in, you know, Duncan Tucker's mom's house in Vegas, and his friend who lived out on a ranch in Arizona, and there was a time when, okay, so here's the story. We started shooting in New York. So I had a bunch of my Atlantic Theater Company pals, because I made her all up. Duncan didn't say look at her like that. I just made her all up, and I showed up on set going, I think she looks like this. And so I had a bunch of my Atlantic Theater Company pals come down and just hang out the first bunch of days going, do a little bit more of this, do a little bit more of that. And on the first day, I said, you know what I'm missing? And forgive me if you know the story, but what I was missing is what was in Bree's pants, because Bree was still packing. And so I went to, I actually, someone was helping me out, and I said, could you go to a sex store? And they have them. You guys, I didn't know this. They have them made like out of, look, you're
Don't look at me. I'm just thoughtfully listening to your story, Felicity. Oh my God.
So they have them made out of silicone that are like, you know, wobbly for guys to put in their bathing suits or like their pants.
Or women.
Or women. They're like falsies for guys. So I said, I need that. So we ended up calling him Andy because the costumer's boyfriend, who was a total dick, was named Andy. And Andy lived in my girdle. So it was, I think, 2/3 of the way through shooting, and Duncan came to me and he said, I think we need a scene where we see Bree caught. We need a scene where her son figures out that Bree is still a guy. And this is before the guy knows that Bree is her father. And he said, I think what we want to do is take Andy and paint Andy, because it's like clear white silicone, paint Andy and show Bree has to pee, and she's peeing by the side of the road. And he looks in the rearview mirror and he sees Andy. And I burst into tears. And I went, I don't think I can do it. And he had to really talk me off the ledge. And I think it came down to, I felt really protective of Bree. And I felt like it was a betrayal to show what she would not want to show the world. And I had to, you know, to do it anyway. But But that whole thing was, I didn't know if it was working or not. You know, it's not like you get to see dailies, and I didn't know if it was like a bad Carol Burnett skit or if it was working.
Lovely wants to know.
Lovely? Really?
It's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
How do you spell it?
Lovlee.
Lovely.
It's real, it's not staged.
It's fantastic.
When preparing for a role, particularly one with a lot of meat or depth, do you do anything differently for a theater role than you would do for a film or television role?
Yes, just in terms of the time preparation.
Yeah, I didn't realize he actually asked that, or
Okay.
semi-asked it earlier.
Yeah, you got so much time for theater. I mean, we just rehearsed that play for 3 months. And it's so condensed with TV. I haven't really done that much film. It's so condensed. And also with film, because there's so many distractions, if it's difficult, I sort of have to go there in the morning, and I can't. I mean, it's not like Daniel Day-Lewis where you got to call me by my character name, but whatever it takes for him, he's genius. Who cares? But I cannot focus elsewhere. And you know, that's something I learned on American Crime, because you know, when you're on set, you kind of want to be like, hey, we're playing around, and hey, and you know, you want to make everyone comfortable and you want to be helpful. And I had to learn really early on that my desire to pull out of the focus was to make myself comfortable. So the camera guy's working and they're fixing a light, and my instinct is to go, are you seeing a reflection from there? Do you want that? Do you want me to move that light? Because I want to help, and I want to be involved, and it's really lonely when you're not. So you kind of have to, I find with television and with film that's challenging, it's lonely because you got to sort of stay there. You got to stay in it, for me.
Cool. Victor asks, what would you have done differently if you were not an actor?
If I was not an actor, like I said, you know, I'm not really good at anything else.
You might be at that beauty shop still. Doing
Yeah, I
people's
might be
hair.
at that beauty shop. You know, I'd have to go way, way back because, you know, college was all about acting. High school, I went to an arts high school. You know, I think I would have wanted to be an athlete. I would have wanted to be like a ski racer or a runner. Or I wanted to be with athletes. I like teams, and I like that team spirit, and I like competition. Mathematician.
Lindsay asks, what would you tell your 24-year-old self?
Look around and say, okay, I'm going to give you a couple pieces. When I was about 19 or 20, I was in New York, and I went to this fancy Broadway director's house because I knew his daughter. And I sat down and I asked him kind of the same question, not as eloquently as you. And he said, here's what I did. I gave myself a 5-year plan. I said, if I'm not working in 5 years, then I'm out. Because, you know, we always want to quit every day. We're like, oh, is this the final sign? Is this the sign that I should become a dentist? So he said, I gave myself a 5-year plan. And then I gave myself another 5-year plan, which is if I'm making a living in 5 years. And honest to God, and that living was X number of dollars a year. And I went, oh, and I was 19. And I said, I'm going to give myself a 5-year plan. And it released me from that daily decision of quitting. So that's the first thing I'd say. Give yourself a 5-year plan, or a 3-year plan, or whatever you want it to be. But not more than 2. It's got to be more than 2. And then the next thing I'd say is, geez, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but my mistakes. The next thing I would do is, you know, I didn't work hard when I was younger. I work really hard now, but I didn't quite know how to work hard. I didn't know what it meant. And also it frightened me. So I would sort of go, yeah, I kind of know what I'm doing. I would look around and go, what am I not doing? What area could I work harder in? Is it my voice? Is it my body? Am I not spontaneous? Do I have an accent? Do I need to see myself on camera? Where am I not working? And if you can check in on that every day and go, am I working hard? And learn that. Because hard work far outweighs talent. Far. How's that?
I love it.
Okay.
Those are some very good pieces of advice. So for our final question from me.
Out!
Those have all been asked.
Oh my God, well done.
Made it through. I think sometimes you can learn very much from great advice, and I think you can also learn from terrible advice.
Yeah.
What is the worst piece of advice about acting you have ever been given?
It makes me mad just thinking about it. Well, we've all had really shitty teachers and really great teachers. I don't know that there was a piece of advice I was given that was dreadful, but I've had acting teachers and directors whose idea was to break me down, whose idea was, I'm going to show you what's wrong with you so you can choose what's right with you. And because, an actor is open, and because we want to be open and we want to learn and we're, team motivated, we go, yeah, okay, all right. And that never helped me. And I wish I'd gone back to those people and said, zip it. I remember I had a director. I was in a big Neil Simon play that I got fired off of. I've gotten fired a bunch. And he would see in the front row of the big Broadway house while we're rehearsing, and he'd go, as you're acting, as well as you can, fake, fake, like that. You're just going, sorry. So that's pretty bad. The other advice is, I would pick a good piece of advice is, I would pick the people who you trust and really ask them what they think and tell everybody else to lie. And I'm not kidding you. When people come to my play, I go, all I want to hear from you is how great I am. That's all I want to hear when you come backstage. And if I really want to know, I'll ask you later. But all I want to hear back is, oh my God, you're so good. That was
Well, Felicity, you were fantastic tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all of you for coming out, and have a nice evening. And you can steal the water too, like an audition room if you want.
He didn't make me wait. Thanks, you guys.